I went for a routine vasectomy with my wife, Eleanor, right by my side. As the anesthesia began to take hold, I remained in a strange state, semi-conscious, fully aware of my surroundings, but physically unable to move a muscle. Through the haze of my blurred vision, I watched the surgeon, Dr. Julian Thorne, slip a thick white envelope to the nurse and whisper urgently, "Give this to his wife. Don't let him or anyone else see it." My blood ran cold. The atmosphere in the room shifted instantly. Something was terribly, terrifyingly wrong. I kept pretending to be unconscious, forcing my breathing to remain steady while my heart pounded against my ribs like a trapped bird. 30 minutes later, I discovered exactly what was inside that envelope. I packed my belongings immediately and left town that very same night. I am about to tell you what was in that envelope, but I need you to do something first. Comment your location and current time below. Let me know someone out there understands how terrifying this moment was for me. If you want to support truth and justice, make sure to subscribe to this channel. At 54, I thought I had life completely figured out. I had 25 years of marriage to Eleanor, a brilliant daughter named Sophia in her final year of law school, and Sterling Development Group, the legacy my grandfather started and my father built into a real estate empire. I was wrong about having it figured out. Dead wrong. Sterling Development was in my DNA. 3 generations of building up the city, one skyscraper at a time. By the time I inherited the company after my father's passing 25 years ago, I knew exactly what kind of man I wanted to be. Solid, reliable, a man who kept his promises. I met Eleanor at a high-profile charity gala in February of 1999. She was 25, working as an event coordinator and new to the city. I was 29, newly in charge of the company and drowning in loneliness after losing my father. Eleanor was beautiful, charming, and seemed genuinely captivated by everything I said. We married by November of that same year. Sophia arrived 2 years later. For a quarter of a century, I thought we had built an unshakable foundation. Eleanor advanced to become the director of public relations at a major hospitality group. Sophia grew up in our Myers Park estate, a whip-smart kid who wanted to make a tangible difference in the world. Law school at the state university was her dream. She wanted to come back home, maybe help manage the legal side of the business someday. That was the life I thought I was living. But over the past few months, the atmosphere in our home had shifted. Eleanor had grown distant, constantly glued to her phone, always finding a reason to be somewhere else. The Tuesday evening that should have been my first red flag, I came home to a pitch-black house. Eleanor was late due to a client emergency, and Sophia was at a study group. I ate cold takeout alone at the kitchen island. When Eleanor finally walked in around 9 p.m., she was distracted, checking her phone every 30 seconds. "Just work crisis," she muttered when I asked. "I'm exhausted." She went straight upstairs. I tried to ignore the gnawing feeling that my wife felt like a total stranger. The following week, she brought it up over breakfast after Sophia had already left for class. "Arthur, we need to talk about something." I looked up from my tablet. "Okay, we're 50 and 54 now. We have Sophia. She's practically an adult." Eleanor's voice was measured, almost rehearsed. "I think you should consider a vasectomy. At our age, why risk unexpected complications? We don't need any surprises." The suggestion caught me completely off guard. We hadn't discussed this. We hadn't even talked about whether we wanted more kids or not. "I hadn't really thought about it," I admitted, putting down my coffee. "I have. I've been thinking about it a lot." She reached across the marble table, placing her manicured hand over mine. "There's an excellent doctor here in the city, Dr. Julian Thorne, highly recommended. He specializes in these procedures." Something about the way she said it made my stomach tighten. Not the suggestion itself, that was logical enough, but the fact that she had already researched the doctor, already had a specific name ready to go. "You've already looked into this?" I asked, skepticism creeping into my voice. "Just want what's best for us, for our future retirement." She squeezed my hand. "Will you at least meet with him?" I looked at my wife, at the woman I had loved for a quarter of a century, at the face I thought I knew as well as my own reflection. "Okay," I said, relenting. "I'll meet with him." Eleanor smiled, a look of genuine relief washing over her. Thank you. I'll set up the appointment. Looking back now, I can see all the subtle signs I missed. The way she had already planned the logistics, the intense relief in her eyes when I agreed, the fact that she had a doctor's name ready before I'd even considered the idea. But at the time, I was blind. I saw my wife, the mother of my child, the woman who shared my bed. The morning of the procedure arrived 2 weeks later, September 15th, a Tuesday. I remember the date vividly because it was the last day I ever trusted my wife. Dr. Julian Thorne came highly recommended. That should have been my first warning. Eleanor drove us to the medical center at 7 a.m. She checked her phone incessantly during the drive. Not unusual, as she was always busy, but the frequency felt frantic. "You okay?" I asked.
Fine, just nervous for you. She squeezed my hand. You know I worry. At 8:15, we met Dr. Thorne in a sterile consultation room. He was 51 with steel gray hair, a Swiss watch that cost more than a car, and the kind of arrogant posture surgeons develop after years of playing God. He barely made eye contact with me, directing nearly all his attention to Eleanor. The procedure is routine, he stated. General anesthesia, 45 minutes total, quick recovery. Eleanor asked questions, too many questions, about the anesthesia, the recovery time, the risks. Thorne answered each one with practiced brevity, his eyes locking with hers in a way that made my chest tighten with unease. At 8:45, Nurse Sarah Jenkins came to take me to the operating room. She looked young, exhausted, with dark circles under her eyes. Eleanor kissed my forehead. "I'll be right here when you wake up." The operating room was freezing, bright LED lights blindingly overhead. Nurse Jenkins connected the monitors. The anesthesiologist placed a mask over my face. "Count backward from 10, Mr. Sterling. 10, 9, 8. The world went soft and dark, and then I was floating, conscious but disconnected. I could hear voices, crystal clear, but I couldn't move a finger. I couldn't open my eyelids. The anesthesia held me suspended, mentally aware but physically paralyzed. It was a terrifying sensation, like being buried alive within my own body. "Is his wife still in the waiting room?" Thorne's voice cut through the silence, low and tense. "Yes, doctor," Nurse Jenkins replied, sounding uncertain. "Good. After we finish, give her this envelope. Don't let him see it. She knows it's coming." My heart rate spiked. I felt the surge of adrenaline, the primal spike of fear, but the monitors stayed strangely quiet, perhaps tampered with, or perhaps the drugs kept my body's reactions suppressed, even as my mind screamed. "Doctor, I'm not comfortable with this," Jenkins started. "You were paid to assist, not to have opinions," Thorne's voice snapped, sharp as a scalpel. "Give her the envelope when he's in recovery. Understood?" A pause. "Yes, doctor." I forced myself to stay absolutely motionless, to keep my breathing rhythmic, to give no sign I had heard every damning word. The procedure continued, 30 minutes that felt like 30 years. My mind raced through endless possibilities, each more horrific than the last. What was in that envelope? Why did Eleanor know it was coming? At 10:30, they wheeled me into recovery. I kept my eyes mostly closed, watching through slitted lids as Nurse Jenkins moved nervously, glancing at something in her scrub pocket. The envelope. Eleanor appeared in the doorway. "Can I see him?" "He's still coming out of it. Dr. Thorne wanted to speak with you first. Consultation room 2, down the hall." "Perfect," Eleanor said. "Perfect," I thought bitterly. They think I'm still unconscious. After Eleanor left, I forced my heavy eyes open. "Water," I rasped. Nurse Jenkins jumped. "Mr. Sterling, you're awake earlier than expected." "Bathroom," I said, sitting up. My head spun violently from the drugs, but my mind was razor sharp. I stumbled to the small bathroom attached to the room and locked the door. From the narrow window, I had a direct line of sight into consultation room 2. Eleanor sat alone at first. Then Nurse Jenkins entered, placed a thick envelope on the table, and quietly left without a word. Eleanor stared at it for a long moment before picking it up with trembling hands. I watched her open it. Her face transformed. Shock, then something that looked like dark satisfaction, followed by tears. But they weren't tears of sadness. I had been married to this woman for 25 years. I knew her expressions better than anyone. These were tears of relief.
A moment later, Dr. Thorne entered the room. He sat across from her, leaning forward intimately. They spoke. I couldn't hear through the glass, but then he reached across the table and placed his hand over hers. The gesture was too familiar, too possessive. His thumb stroked the back of her hand. She didn't pull away. This wasn't a doctor comforting a patient's wife. This was something else entirely. Genuine nausea hit me. The anesthesia, the betrayal, the fury, it all collided. I vomited into the toilet. When I emerged, pale and shaking, Jenkins looked concerned. "Mr. Sterling?" "Where is my wife?" I demanded. "She just left. Emergency at work. She said she'll pick you up in 2 hours." Of course she did. I pulled out my phone with trembling hands. There was only one person I could trust now. I texted Marcus Hale. "I need you. Something is very wrong." 2 days after the surgery, September 17th, I sat.
"Tell me everything," Marcus said. I did. The overheard whisper, the envelope, Nurse Jenkins's fear, watching through that bathroom window as Eleanor opened it, the tears of relief, the intimate touch with Thorne. Marcus listened without interrupting, his eyes narrowing. "You want me to investigate your wife and this doctor?" "I want to know what was in that envelope. I want to know why she is lying to me." Marcus nodded grimly. "I can do that. But Arthur, you need to stay completely calm at home. Act normal. Don't let her know you suspect a thing." "I can do that." "Can you? Because this is going to get harder before it gets easier." I met his eyes. "I've been acting fine for 2 days already. I can keep doing it." That night I went home. I had dinner with Eleanor like nothing had happened. She asked how I was feeling. I said better than expected. She smiled, kissed my cheek, and went upstairs to take a call. I cleaned up the kitchen, pretending my world wasn't disintegrating around me. 48 hours later, September 19th, a Saturday, Marcus called me back. "Sit down," he said when I arrived. He spread files across the desk. Dr. Julian Thorne, age 51, previously worked at Emory University Hospital in Atlanta from 2016 to 2019. Atlanta? He left in 2019 and not voluntarily. A scandal involving a patient's wife. Nothing public, but my source says Thorne was given a choice: resign quietly or face a full ethics investigation. What kind of scandal? The inappropriate kind. He resigned, moved here, and joined the medical center. Marcus pulled out another document. He owns a penthouse at The View, $800,000, way above what a surgeon at a mid-tier medical center should be able to afford comfortably. I dug into his financials. Thorne has been receiving regular cash deposits, $7,500 here, $12,000 there, always just under the IRS reporting threshold. Money laundering? Maybe. And these deposits started about 2 years ago. This wasn't sudden. This is established. Marcus pulled out surveillance photos. Eleanor entering the View's parking garage and lobby, getting into an elevator. She's been there 3 times since your surgery. Monday evening, Tuesday afternoon, Wednesday evening. Each visit lasted between 90 minutes and 3 hours. I stared at the photos. My wife walking into another man's building. "She's having an affair," I said, the words feeling hollow and inadequate. Marcus was quiet. "Maybe, but Arthur, look at the pattern. The money started 2 years ago, but there's something else, something from the deep past." Marcus opened a new folder and pushed it across the table. "I found this in the archives of the Atlanta Journal-Constitution from 26 years ago, August 1997. Inside was a newspaper clipping, yellowed but legible. The headline read, 'Socialite Eleanor Vance announces engagement to Dr. Julian Thorne.' The photograph beneath stopped my breath. Eleanor, 24 years old, wearing a champagne silk gown, standing beside a man in a tuxedo. Julian Thorne, younger, his arm around his waist, both of them smiling at a charity gala in Atlanta. "That's impossible," I whispered. "She told me she came from Rhode Island. She said she'd never been to the South before coming here." "She lied, Arthur, about everything." Marcus laid out a timeline. August 1997, Eleanor Vance and Thorne announce engagement. January 1998, engagement quietly called off. Thorne's wife Margaret filed for divorce. Rumors of his affair with a patient's spouse surfaced then, too. June 1998, Eleanor Vance disappeared from Atlanta entirely. Then Marcus pulled out a clipping from the Business Journal, December 1998. The headline, "Young Developer Inherits Sterling Corporation Following Father's Death." My own face stared back at me, 28 years old, standing in front of the half-built Sterling Tower. "She saw this," I said slowly. "She saw this article." More than that, in January 1999, a woman named Eleanor Vance was hired as an event coordinator for the Children's Hospital Charity Gala, the same gala where Sterling Development was the lead sponsor. She targeted me. My hands were shaking. She planned the meeting. Yes, and Thorne, he moved to Spartanburg, South Carolina to lay low. By 2019, he was clean enough to join the hospital here. February 2019, you updated your life insurance from $1 million to $3.5 million. Do you remember why? Eleanor suggested it. She said with Sophia getting older, we needed more coverage. That same month, Julian Thorne moved to this city.
The room tilted. 25 years. She had been lying to me for 25 years. Our entire marriage was a long con. "There's more," Marcus said, his voice gentle but firm. He reached for a final, thick folder. "This is the worst part. You need to see this." Inside was a genetic testing report, analysis, paternity testing. Result, 0% probability. Conclusion, Arthur Sterling is excluded as the biological father of Sophia Sterling. I stared at the words. That's impossible. Sophia is my daughter. I was there when she was born. "I'm sorry, Arthur. I found this in Eleanor's cloud storage. She had it done 6 weeks ago." 22 years, I choked out. Every bedtime story, every school play. And look at this. Marcus showed me phone records, texts from a second phone Eleanor kept hidden. Eleanor to JT. "When will it be done?" JT to Eleanor. "Soon. The medical records are already in place. The patient." Eleanor to JT. "I'm tired of being patient. It's been 25 years, Julian." The procedure was your vasectomy, and look at these falsified medical records from the hospital. They indicate complications from your surgery, potential fertility issues, risk factors, all lies. Why? To make it look like I couldn't have children, I realized. So if Sophia's paternity is ever questioned, these records explain it. Exactly. But Arthur, the life insurance policy. The primary beneficiary is Eleanor. The secondary is Sophia, but only when she turns 25. That's 3 years away. If you die from medical complications now, Eleanor gets everything. "They're going to kill me," I said, the realization settling like concrete in my gut. Yes, and there was one more email regarding Sophia. Subject, collateral. Eleanor to JT. "When everything is settled, we send S to boarding school in Europe. Switzerland has a good one. A small trust fund should keep her quiet. She's collateral damage, but necessary. She'll adapt. Kids always do." JT to Eleanor. "Agreed. The girl is not my problem. Never was." Collateral damage. They were going to erase my daughter, our daughter, from their lives. A cold fury, different from anything I had ever felt, washed over me. It wasn't hot rage. It was calculating and methodical. "Chris, Arthur," Marcus said carefully, "what are you going to do?" I stood up and looked at the investigation board. They think I'm a trusting fool. They think I'll react emotionally. They're wrong. We are going to destroy them completely, legally and permanently. Let's give them exactly what they want, a perfect opportunity to act. And when they make their move, we'll have them on record confessing everything. Friday evening, October 13th, everything was finally ready. We had spent 2 agonizing weeks in meticulous preparation, during which I played the role of the recovering, oblivious husband perfectly, while simultaneously building an airtight trap around the woman I slept next to. Marcus had hired a top-tier tech expert and managed to turn the building maintenance supervisor at The View into an asset.
We had high-definition cameras and audio bugs hidden in Dr. Thorne's penthouse. The living room, the bedroom, and the hallway were all wired. We also brought in Detective Samuel Briggs from the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department. Briggs was a veteran officer who had investigated the Emery scandal years ago, but had been unable to make charges stick due to a lack of concrete evidence. He had a personal score to settle with Thorne. "You get me the evidence," Briggs had told us, his eyes hard, "and I'll get the warrants signed within the hour." I had also taken one final crucial step. I went to an independent, secure lab for a real DNA test. The results had come back 2 days prior. 99.9% probability that Sophia was my biological daughter. The test Eleanor had stored in the cloud was a complete forgery, just like her background, her love, and her entire persona. At 4 p.m. that Friday, I sat in Marcus's surveillance van parked inconspicuously across from the view. The air inside was thick with tension and the smell of stale coffee. Detective Briggs was checking the audio feeds. At 5:30 p.m., I made the call to Eleanor. "Honey, I have to work late tonight. A massive issue came up with the South End project. Don't wait for me. I probably won't be home until near midnight." "Oh, okay. That's a shame," her voice chirped, sounding too bright, too eager. "I'll just rest and maybe watch a movie. Don't worry about me." I hung up, feeling a cold pit in my stomach. I heard what she didn't say, the sheer relief, the excitement of the opportunity I had just handed her.
At 7 p.m., the monitors showed Eleanor entering Thorne's penthouse. She wasn't dressed for a movie night at home. She was wearing a dress I had bought her for our anniversary, looking elegant and dangerous. Thorne opened the door, and they embraced immediately, not as colleagues or old friends, but with the desperate familiarity of lovers. They sat on the leather sofa, pouring wine. I put on my headphones, forcing myself to listen to the woman I had loved for 25 years conspire against my life. "How much longer, Julian?" Eleanor asked, taking a sip of wine. Her voice was clear through the speakers. "It's been 25 years playing the doting housewife to a man I can barely stand. I am exhausted." "Patience, darling. We are at the finish line," Thorne replied, his voice calm and clinical. "The medical records are perfect. The surgical complications are documented in the hospital system. We just need the right moment. An accident." "Are we really going to do it?" Eleanor hesitated, swirling her wine. "We don't need to do much. Construction sites are inherently dangerous places," Thorne said coldly. "A 54-year-old man who just had surgical complications, working long hours under high stress, a fall from scaffolding, a piece of faulty equipment, or even a heart attack induced by the wrong medication. The autopsy will show exactly what I've documented: underlying surgical trauma and stress. The medical examiner will sign off without a second glance." "And the money?" "Between the workers' compensation lawsuit and your $3.5 million life insurance policy, plus liquidating Sterling Development, you're looking at close to $18 million. Finally, we get justice for what they did to us in Atlanta, for how his family overshadowed mine." "What about Sophia?" Eleanor asked. "She's been asking questions. She notices I'm distracted." "What about her?" Thorne scoffed. "She's barely his daughter emotionally anyway. He works too much. We send her to that boarding school in Zurich like we discussed, set up a small trust fund to keep her quiet. By the time she turns 25 and is eligible for her share, we'll be in Costa Rica or somewhere without an extradition treaty." "She's 22 now," Eleanor noted. "Only 3 more years." "She'll adapt. Kids always do," Thorne said dismissively. "Besides, she's just collateral damage. She was necessary to secure the marriage, but she is not our problem anymore." "That's enough," Detective Briggs said, reaching for his radio. "Clear conspiracy to commit murder. All units, move in." We rode the elevator to the 24th floor in silence. Marcus, Detective Briggs, 4 uniformed officers, and me. My heart was pounding against my ribs, but my hands were steady. At 7:35 p.m., Briggs hammered on Thorne's penthouse door.
"Dr. Thorne, police, open the door." Silence, then frantic whispers. "Open it now, or we break it down." The door swung open. Thorne stood there in casual clothes, trying to look confused. "Officers, what is the meaning of this?" "Dr. Julian Thorne, you are under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, medical fraud, and insurance fraud," Briggs announced, snapping the handcuffs on him. Eleanor appeared from the hallway, her face pale. "Julian, what?" She stopped dead when she saw me standing behind the wall of police uniforms. The color drained from her face completely. "Arthur, what is this?" I looked at her, searching for any trace of the woman I thought I knew, but there was only a stranger. "It's over, Eleanor. All of it." "Arthur, please let me explain." "Explain what?" I cut her off, my voice trembling with suppressed rage. "That I'm an easy mark? That you've hated me for 25 years? I heard every word, Eleanor. We have cameras in the room." An officer stepped forward. "Eleanor Sterling, you are under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, fraud, and money laundering." "You can't do this," she screamed, her composure shattering as the cuffs clicked. "Sophia, think about Sophia. She is my daughter." "Sophia is my daughter." I stepped closer. My voice dropped to a lethal whisper. "I ran a real DNA test, Eleanor. 99.9% probability. The test you uploaded to the cloud was a forgery, just like your background, just like your love. But you knew that, didn't you? You just wanted to strip me of everything before you killed me." Shock flashed across her face. She hadn't expected me to verify the DNA. She looked at Thorne with pure hatred. "You said he was stupid. You said he'd never check." "Shut up, Eleanor," Thorne yelled as the officers dragged him toward the elevator. As they led her away, Eleanor twisted back, screaming at me. "Sophia will never forgive you for this. She'll hate you. You've destroyed her life." "Maybe," I said to the empty hallway as the elevator doors closed, "but at least she'll be alive." The aftermath. That night was the darkest of my life. The arrest was easy compared to what came next. I sat in my car outside our home, the house dark and silent. I had to tell Sophia before she heard it on the news, or worse, from her mother. I called her at 10:47 p.m. "Sophia, I need you to come home. It's about Mom." "Mom called me 20 minutes ago from jail." Sophia's voice was ice cold. "She told me everything, how you framed her, how you've been planning to get rid of me because you want a divorce."
"Sophia, that isn't true. Please, just come home and look at the evidence." "I can't believe you," she cried. 25 years, Dad. She devoted her life to us, and you throw her in a cell? I'm staying at Emma's. Do not contact me." She hung up. The next 8 weeks were a living hell. I lived in a ghost town of a house. Every room held a memory that was now tainted. I tried to text her, begged her to meet. No reply. Thomas told me she had hired a lawyer for Eleanor, using her own savings. She was visiting Eleanor in jail weekly, where Eleanor was poisoning her mind with more lies. I wrote Sophia a 6-page letter. I poured everything into it. The timeline, the discovery of the affair, the fake DNA test versus the real one. I admitted that I might have been blind, but I loved her. I ended it by saying, "I am not asking you to stop loving your mother. I am asking you to listen to the truth. Love and truth are not always the same thing." I mailed it on October 17th. Silence followed. "Let me force a meeting," Marcus offered one day. "Show her the video." "No," I said, staring out at the rain. "If I force it, she'll view it as manipulation. She has to choose the truth herself. If she doesn't, then I lose her, but at least she is safe from them." On December 8th, the breakthrough finally happened. Sophia hadn't responded to me, but doubt had begun to creep in. She had gone to our house while I was at work to get some clothes and found an old iPhone in her childhood desk drawer, one she used in high school. She charged it up, looking for old photos, but instead found a synced message thread from 2019 that she had never noticed. Mom to unknown.
I can't stand it anymore. 4 more years until she's in college, then we can proceed. Unknown, Thorn, we've waited 20 years. 4 more is nothing. Mom, easy for you to say. You don't have to pretend to love him every day. That was the crack in the dam. On December 9th, she went to Marcus's office unannounced. She watched the surveillance tapes. She heard her mother's voice clear as day. She's just collateral damage, not our problem. On December 12th, Sophia visited Eleanor in jail one last time. She asked for the truth. Eleanor tried to lie again, blaming me, but Sophia recited the text messages and the recording. Eleanor's mask finally slipped. She lashed out, blaming her life choices on circumstances, never once apologizing for the betrayal. Sophia walked out of the visitation room and never looked back. 3 days later, on December 15th, I heard the front door opened. I froze in my study. "Dad?" Her voice was small, broken. I walked into the hallway. Sophia stood there with a duffel bag, her eyes red and swollen. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then she dropped the bag and ran to me. "I'm sorry," she sobbed into my chest, her body shaking. "I'm so sorry. I didn't believe you. I chose her over you." "It's okay," I whispered, tears streaming down my own face. "You're here now. That's all that matters." "It's not okay," she cried. "She was going to kill you, and she called me collateral damage." "You are my daughter," I said firmly, holding her face in my hands. "You are my world, and nothing she says can ever change that." The legacy. The trial began 8 months later, in June 2024. It was a spectacle. Prosecutors Maria Morgan and Robert Torres laid out the 25-year con perfectly. The jury listened to the tapes in stunned silence. They saw the financial records showing nearly $500,000 siphoned off. They saw the medical records Dr. Thorne had falsified. But the most damning moment was the DNA expert. Eleanor's defense tried to claim the paternity test was irrelevant. The judge overruled. The expert testified that Eleanor's document was a crude forgery, while the test I ran confirmed my paternity with absolute certainty. Eleanor was sentenced to 18 years in prison. Dr. Julian Thorne received 25 years without parole. Eleanor's sister, who managed the shell companies, accepted a plea deal for 8 years. 1 year after the trial, in June 2025, I stood on the rooftop of the newly completed Sterling Plaza. The city of Charlotte stretched out before me, golden in the sunset. I was 55 now, a little grayer, a little wearier, but free. The rooftop door opened and Sophia stepped out. She was 23 now, a law school graduate preparing for the bar exam. She handed me a coffee. "Have you been up here all morning?" she asked, smiling, a real smile, one I hadn't seen in years. "Just thinking," I said, "about how far we've come." "We survived," she said softly. "We did more than survive, Soph. We rebuilt." I turned to her. "I made a decision. In 5 years, when I turn 60, I'm handing full control of the company to you." Her eyes widened. "Why me? I'm just starting." "Because this isn't just a company, it's a legacy. And legacy isn't about money or buildings. It's about integrity. It's about truth. You learned the value of truth the hard way, just like I did. You are the only one I trust to carry this forward." She hugged me, resting her head on my shoulder. "I won't let you down." "I know." She pulled back, hesitating. "Dad, I'm seeing someone. His name is James. He's an engineer. He knows about everything, and he still wants to meet you." I laughed, a genuine sound of joy. "Bring him over this weekend, but tell him I have a very thorough background check process." She laughed too, and the sound drifted over the city. So here I am today, sharing this true story with you, not for sympathy, but as a warning to everyone listening. For 25 years, I trusted blindly. I ignored the small signs because I wanted the fairy tale to be real.
That is the lesson God taught me the hard way. Trust, but verify. Love deeply, but keep your eyes open. Predators study their prey, and sometimes they wear the faces of the people we love most. Don't ignore the red flags. If something feels off, investigate it. Protect your assets, but more importantly, protect your heart and your children. The greatest legacy isn't what we leave in our bank accounts, it's the wisdom we pass down. If this story resonated with you and you want to support our mission of exposing the truth, please subscribe to this channel for more real-life lessons. Comment below if you've ever experienced betrayal or have advice for others. Your engagement helps others avoid my mistakes. Stay safe, stay vigilant, and never let anyone take your truth away from you.